Good morning, everyone. Welcome for those in the room and also online. I'm your MC and will be hosting you today, Sharyn Rundle-Thiele, for those who haven't met me. Change is something that's inevitable. It's around us, it happens all the time. And I think the COVID pandemic has taught us one thing. If we really want to change something, we can make it happen fast. So I'm going to hand this morning to Peter Binks to open proceedings. So thank you, Peter. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sharyn, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity to speak here today on such a topic in front of such a committed and exciting group of people. It's a real honour and a privilege. So welcome everyone. Good morning and welcome to the first in-person Change Conference since 2019. And what a 3 years it's been, and what a delight it is to be back here all together. Because I think change is one of those things where you've got to see the people. You've got to be with the people. You've got to feel the energy and see the determination in what they do. But let me start with the formalities. As Sharyn indicated, my name is Peter Binks. I'm the Vice President of Engagement at Griffith University, which means I look after partnerships with external organisations and leveraging all we do internally to impact on the communities with which to whom we are committed. On behalf of Griffith University, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet, in our cases the Jagera and Turrbal people, and those from which each of us is coming to this event today from all around Australia and all around the world. We extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are here today and participating in this session remotely. At Griffith, we're committed to working directly with our local Aboriginal communities and with all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities with whom we partner, and the role that we can play with them in building better futures. It's also a responsibility to acknowledge the support of all the people who have made today happen. And there is a huge number of speakers who we'll be seeing over the next 48 hours who make Change 2022 happen. There are people who've delivered change already in a whole variety of topics that range from supporting young people who are at risk of violence and abuse, to reducing the waste that's becoming endemic within our society, to addressing the ecosystems around us, in particular koala sightings, protecting koalas from a whole variety of different threats, to looking at reduced fish catches and working out how we work with the communities and the ecosystems that are there. And interestingly, Sharyn, Tanya Plibersek was at the Nathan campus yesterday, specifically being shown around the koala population. And we're very proud of the work that the Nathan community does to support all of that. Thank you all. Your support is critical. And to our 2022 speakers, this conference runs on the smell of an oily rag, an extraordinary voluntary effort. So thank you for those who've made your own way here and allowed us to support the conference in different ways. This year our speakers are from New Zealand, from the UK, from across Australia. Our online hashtag Change Tribe 2022 includes people from every continent, from the US, Asia, Europe. Participants will also represent a wide range of organisations such as Sustainability Victoria, Department of Health Queensland, TransLink, Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, Services Australia, etc., etc. A whole number of organisations who have contributed by their presence and by their support in many different means. Thank you for being here and being involved. There are also partners who contribute to the running of this conference in different ways, and I particularly want to call out the Australian Association of Social Marketing and Content Group, who have done so much to make this happen in an online presence. I want to have a particular call out to the Social Marketing at Griffith team, who've worked tirelessly since the middle of August, and despite so many obstacles and so many challenges, to bring this two-day event together. You've done an absolutely amazing job. I want to specifically thank Melissa Daly, Sandra Rico Corpas, Christina Pedersen, Dr. Timo Dietrich for supporting the extraordinary Professor Sharyn Rundle-Thiele. The woman is a force of nature, is unstoppable in so many ways, and we owe you so much for bringing this together, Sharyn. To make Change 22 happen in person and for making the live stream event in particular happen. We also want to thank the large number of Griffith University students who are volunteering and volunteers from social marketing at Griffith who have generously donated their time to allow this to happen. So I think I'm kind of on the final stanza. But I want to speak a little bit about why this is so important to us. I'm relatively recently in the university sphere. This is the first time I've worked for a university. But I've had this belief for all my life that universities are about making change happen. We do that through so many different ways. We do research, we do policy, we do advocacy, we educate the leaders of the future. And I think we often forget the importance of our role. You know, universities have been around for over 1,000 years, and we forget that we need to be the change agents. We need to be the provocateurs, we need to be the inspirers, we need to be the catalysts. And that's what today is about, probably more than anything else that we do this year. It's about really enabling people to do something very, very different. I love the model. The empower, enable, enact is a beautiful articulation of how change happens and what a university can do. We in Griffith are trying to do that a little bit differently, but we're part of a group of universities who really want to make things happen. So that's what today is all about. Thank you again for the privilege of being here. I'm going to hand back to Sharyn, who will introduce Yannick van Hierden, a wellbeing behaviour architect who will get us going in the right tone. Thank you, Sharyn.
And a big thank you to Peter for opening and welcoming us all here today. Now, as you know, we do like to mix things up just a little bit. And so with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Yannick, and he's going to step you through a good wellbeing start.
Can I grab this? Is there a mic that I can grab? This one, is it working? Yeah, cool. All right. For the next 2 days, we will be focusing on how to create change, and primarily in other people's lives, and that is fantastic. But in the next 5 minutes or so, I want to introduce to you 2 ideas that help you to create change in your personal life. And I like to explore these 2 ideas through a guided meditation. So if you can please get some meditation vibes up in here, just softly playing, please. Can you hear me okay? Everybody can hear me okay? All right. If you're ready, I ask you to just please sit up straight and lengthen your spine. And then if you feel so inclined, please close your eyes. Just become aware of your breath, but don't change anything yet. Just notice whether your breathing is somewhere in the upper regions of the lungs, and if it's short, fast, shallow, or whether it's further down in the lower regions of the lungs, and whether it is slow and deep. Again, don't change anything, just observe. Now, for a lot of people, their breathing is often in the upper regions of the lungs, and it causes a lot of tension. We have, tensed shoulders or neck, and what we want to do is we want to bring our breathing down in that lower part where we activate, where we engage our diaphragm. So I invite you to place your hands on your abdomen, and as you inhale, your abdomen expands. And as you exhale, your belly button comes back toward the spine. So as you inhale, it's like you're filling up a balloon. And then as you exhale, the balloon deflates. And do this a couple times at your own pace. Now we're going to lengthen the exhalation and make it double the length of the inhalation. So as you inhale, let's say for 2 seconds. 1, 2, and then exhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can inhale for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, and exhale for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do this a couple times at the tempo that is right for you. Now what this does is this activates what is called the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps you to feel calm and relaxed. So whenever you are in a situation where you feel stressed or anxious, then you can use this as a tool to change that feeling or that state of mind. And you can use it the other way around as well. If you double the inhalation compared to the exhalation, you can actually create a feeling of energy and alertness. So this is a pretty cool tool that you can apply to change your physical and mental state. Okay, so that's the first idea. The second idea, I'd like you to you can relax your hands. Place your hands down on your lap, for example, and just keep your eyes closed. And I want you to imagine that you're sitting beside an ever-moving stream. And you're just observing the water flowing by. And sticks and leaves are bobbing up and down the stream as they are swept by the current. And similarly, how that stream is moving, I want you to, for the next maybe 20 seconds or so, just observe the stream of mind stuff, be they thoughts, feelings, anxieties, fears, and so on, as they bubble up on the surface of the mind and then disappear. Just be the passive observer, the witness. Whatever happens, you acknowledge it and you let it pass. Just as a stream is very clear or very polluted, so a stream of mind stuff may be very clear or very polluted. But you are not the stream or the sticks and the leaves floating on the stream. You are the detached observer sitting peacefully on the riverbank. Similarly, you are not your mind or its ever-changing contents, be they thoughts, feelings, anxieties, fears, and so on. You are the constant principle, the unaffected, the unchanging perceiver of the ever-changing mind. When you understand that you, the self, are the unaffected perceiver of the mind and its contents, then you can be unaffected by the mind and its contents, including its demands, desires, and so on. And you will not be swept away by the mind's strong currents. As a detached witness, you can achieve greater mental balance, you can make better decisions, and you can deal more effectively with the external influences that affect the internal world of the mind. Now we have ended the meditation, and you can open your eyes. What a lot of people experience is when they practice this type of mindfulness meditation regularly, for a long period of time, they notice that they tend to change the way they approach daily life, where they start to appreciate a sense of equanimity and mindfulness that is not restricted just to a meditation session, but actually becomes a really powerful tool to deal with things with calmness and clarity. So whenever you feel like you're feeling stressed or you're feeling overwhelmed, you can return back to the breath as a tool to change your mental and physical state, but also practice that, being the observer, being the witness, to be detached sometimes from a situation and deal with things in an effective way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yannick. He founded his own wellbeing program during his PhD, and you can see just a little bit of what it is that he gets up to when he's actually running his own very much improving people's health and wellbeing program. Now, I really hope that has helped to actually calm our first speakers, so very much giving this to you. There's a couple of housekeeping details. If we have an emergent situation like fire, etc., please just look straight to me and also my team, so the volunteers in the shirts, and we will get you to the safe point, which is out pretty much where all of our fun chairs are. The toilets are located around the back, so look for the red screen, go around the corner, and the facilities are actually out there. On your lanyard is a QR code. If you scan this, you can see the conference program. You also have the buildings, the map, but again, you also have shirts that you can look to who are going to make sure we get you to the right place at the right time, and we have a very sort of strict timekeeping schedule at play. So this, I will point out, is the wonderful work of the team. So the lanyard itself is actually daisy seeds. They're a native plant. So at the end of the conference, we invite you to plant them and put some water on them and see if you can actually get the seeds to grow. The actual lanyard, this bit itself, is also recycled materials. So the teams work really hard on that element to start to control the things that we have. Hence the no paper and the no things actually handed out to you. So Ricky, we're trying to cut down some of that plastic waste. So let's see if we've actually done it. Now, with no further ado, I would like to actually introduce our first three speakers. And what I want to remind all of you in the audience and online is that don't worry so much about the context. This team is going to talk about koalas a lot. Other teams might talk about other things a lot. Social issues, fishing. You're going to see very different sort of contexts spoken about. But what's really important and underpins some of these sessions as they've been collated and put together is what it takes to make true change happen. So regardless of your context, what you're focusing on here are the processes or the ideas or the way partnerships have been formed. And this first session today gives you a bit of a history lesson on just how to scale up to actually start to really make more change happen more often. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Cathryn Dexter. She's from Redland City Council and is currently overseeing a program to protect koalas there. So welcome to the stage, Kath.
Good morning and hello and welcome. Look, I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to share the experience, or the Redland experience, and to be among a very eclectic group of change makers and to share the next 2 days of ideas and information. So very excited to be here. I think the first thing that do you want to put my presentation up? Yep, thank you. So I think the first thing that I would like us to do is to think about social change and what does that actually mean. What it actually means to each of you, and is it something new? Is it something fancy? I think that social change is, or history. So history, the human history, is all about social change. And for me, probably the terms social marketing, change behaviour, social conditioning, influencing, these terms are perhaps new, but certainly the practice is not. So if we look, okay, sorry, maybe I need to do that. Next slide, please. If we look at this, the images on this slide, I think that each one of them will be actually familiar to you, even without the use of words. Now, I want you to think about why these images may be familiar to you. And I would suggest that probably that they reflect something that you've been made aware of or that has been a consequence or a benefit to you. And what has this got to do with koala conservation? Like many people my age, I've had a couple of interesting careers. And prior to my current career as a conservation biologist and ecologist for the Redland City Council, I had a 20-plus year in the communications field, particularly in advertising. And I learnt two really important lessons during that period. The first was the power of information to influence. And the second is that there had to be a benefit to the end user. And this is how I've taken those lessons and applied those to the conservation actions that we're undertaking in the Redland City Council area. Next slide, please. It's not. So for me, there are a couple of guiding principles, and they're based on two things. So to get a change, you've got to make a change. And if you don't know, you can't care. So based on those principles, you can start to tease out what you need to do to affect change and to see if you can get people to care about the things that you want them to understand more about. And I think the communication has been central to this. Next slide, please. So I joined this Redland City Council in 2017, the end of 2017. And what we wanted to do was have a look at, there are obviously numerous challenges, and what we wanted to do is have a look at those key challenges and how we would address them. And I guess the first thing was that the community falls into two different categories, if you like. And the categories are that you've got a community of fairly savvy, environmentally savvy people, and there's a category where there's a general apathy. And what I mean by that is not that people don't care or are concerned about the environment, it's just that at this particular time in their life, there are other competing priorities, family commitments or work commitments that don't or preclude them from really sort of getting and undertaking these actions around conservation. Of course, there's the issue of community scepticism, that councils or governments in general are committed to koala conservation due to the ongoing development that they see, the fact that habitat continues to be lost and koala populations still decline. In terms of how people perceive the role of who actually is responsible for conservation, it's generally thought to be the government's job, or perhaps a job for the green groups. And we found that the community in general feels relatively powerless to do, to help in this regard. From Redland City Council's point of view, we had some sort of thinking to do as well. We've been supporting koala conservation for over 20 years, but at that current time, we didn't have a very good understanding of our wild population, things like genetics, health, movement, fragmentation, and movement. So we really had to sit down and think about these key challenges and how we were going to address them. And really it came down to taking a very holistic approach, combining science with the community. So conservation of any species is a really complex and challenging undertaking. But it's made more challenging when you're trying to conserve a species like koalas who like to live in urban areas and peri-urban areas like the Redlands coast. So councils and government have to walk this very fine line or undertake this balancing act of trying to meet the needs of the community while we're building through infrastructure, our houses, roads, shopping centres, sporting fields, swimming pools, all of these the things that help to build our communities, or balancing and trying to protect nature. So all of these things do come at a cost to nature with habitat loss and the introduction particularly of additional threats like cars and dogs. Let me see if I can... Oh, sorry, now I'm going too fast. So the Redlands Coast experience is really one about engaging the community with robust science. And for us, we recognise that successful conservation programs have always been based on understanding that it is a shared responsibility and there are a number of actors in that shared responsibility, and that is a message that we are consistently communicating. So it would be fair to say that it's the government who really sets the direction, policy, funding, and facilitates the conservation efforts, while research is there to guide and increase our learnings for better management actions. And then, of course, it's up to the individuals and the community as a whole to do their part if we're actually going to conserve our iconic koalas. We found that building partnerships was absolutely integral to this process. Forming partnerships with our research groups, all levels of government from federal through to state, and our other local government partners and agencies, environmental groups, citizen scientists, and the community at large. But most importantly, it was actually forming relationships internally in the council to help deliver these programs, to make them as successful as we can. So that I'm not doing a very good job of that. What I'm trying to say is that it was the internal processes that really have helped deliver these programs. So in terms of raising awareness, what we've wanted to do is show consistency to the community. So through consistent messaging and using a variety of media platforms, we wanted to communicate to our community and the local residents that there are koalas in their neighbourhoods and that they can do things to actually help and protect those koalas. Empowering the community to act was also an important step in this process, designing programs for the community to take actions themselves. Things like our Koala Safe Neighbourhood program, our Redlands Coast Koala Watch program, and the Koala Guardians program have all been successful in terms of allowing the community to take part in conservation themselves. And I think finally, what has been really important in this process is not to underestimate the power of data and robust design. I think in many cases this is a part that is often left out when it comes to conservation. Having to evaluate what you do so that you can actually undertake adaptive management. These are the processes that have helped us. So our researchers provide us annual reports and provide recommendations which we then can apply to those lessons. And we have annual community surveys where we go out and we try to get a gauge on what the community is actually thinking about the work that we're doing and are we making any advances. So how are we going? That's pretty pleasing actually. So our koala surveys show that we actually do have a viable breeding population. And our last few survey periods, 2018 and 2020-21, has not indicated that we have a decline in our population over the last few years. Our Redlands Koala Coast program has now 350 plus members and growing. And this was only launched softly in 2020, mid-year, and now we have over 800 sightings. I can tell you that those sightings are actually playing a very important role every day in council decisions. Probably the greatest tell is the things that I put in bold here. Now what we did is I wanted to look at what was happening over the last 10 years with koalas. So I looked at the data from 2012 to 2016 prior to this program that we launched in the Redlands, which was from 2017 to 2021. And during these past 5 years, we've had a 43% reduction in koala dog attacks and similarly a 48% reduction in vehicle strikes in the last 5 years than the past few years. We have a continuing high recall on our smart signs through the community, and that continues to grow in terms of that awareness. Consistently high click rates on our social media posts for our ambassador koalas, which are representing our koala safe neighbourhoods. We have koalas in these neighbourhoods who are all teched up and providing information back to the community and providing us with the science that we need to understand about how they're going, how their health is, and where they're moving to. Our annual community evaluation surveys show that change behaviour is in actual fact happening, and with self-reporting of actions like slowing down taking place, and probably that can be reflected back in those actions, those stats above. And really pleasingly, and this is just a small thing, but we're getting a lot of people just reporting back to the council that they're seeing koalas in their backyard or their local parks that they haven't seen for 10 years. Now, I'd love to be able to say that's because we've managed to somehow increase the population, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's more a case of that people are potentially being a lot more aware that we have them in our neighbourhoods, and I'd like to claim that as through the work that we've been doing. Now, I'm probably running out a little bit of time. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but really what I wanted to demonstrate is that through the consistency of themes throughout our koala awareness programs, we are seeing higher levels of recall, and particularly when we take an effort to target particular sort of areas of the community. This is the graph that I think tells the story best. And it's a demonstration of how, if you continue to be consistent with what you're doing, you'll see an upward trend. And importantly, it's demonstrating that people's awareness around koala death mortality causes, like vehicle strike, like dog attacks, are being recognised. So if you want to know a little bit more about what we do in the Redlands, you can go to our website, which is redland.qld.gov.au/koala. We've got all of our research reports up there, all of the information on our programs. Thank you.
I think Kath had some super wise words. If you want to get a change, you've got to change something. The work of Redland City Council has no doubt started to have a huge influence at a much wider scale, and our next speaker will be speaking about that. But what I want to do now, before we step forward, is actually introduce our question and answer mechanism. As you know, we have people online, we also have people in the room, so we wanted to level the playing field for all. So if you have a specific question for Kath, can I ask you to now take a shot of that QR code or go to Slido and actually enter that number. So just to read it out to you, #2235227. This will run for the entire event. It'll allow you to put your questions to the speakers. So I want you to use this mechanism. As a question pops up, pop it in there. That'll put it into the feed, and we'll try and get through as many questions as we can. Now, later today, we also have an open mic session. Some of you may wish to come to the front of the floor and actually put a problem to the whole group and get some feedback. We will also be using the Slido mechanism for this. If you would prefer not to, because you prefer to hide, just chat to me and maybe I can do your question for you. So don't forget, there's a bit of an open mic to have more of a dialogue so that we're not always just talking straight at you. So I would like to now introduce our next speaker, Dr. Geoff Lundie-Jenkins, who has come all the way down from Toowoomba today to talk with us. Geoff, over to you.
Thanks very much, Sharyn, and also want to acknowledge both Sharyn and Kath and the work that Redland City Council did in bringing the Queensland Government on this journey, and the project that I'll talk about now is a scaling up of the work that Redlands had done with Sharyn's team, and it's really demonstrating the strength of engaging the community and bringing the community along to actually make this change. Again, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land that we're meeting today, the Turrbal and Yagara people, and just pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge their ongoing connection to land, sea and country. Also acknowledge that they're a very important part of our koala conservation programs. Now, I'll start by stepping back a little bit before I then launch into the project stuff. Again, the Queensland Government and koalas in general are facing a bit of a conundrum. So they're a really iconic and quintessentially Australian species. They're known around the world. You'd expect that there'd be no problems in conserving or supporting koala populations. The unfortunate thing for the koalas in southeast Queensland is that they share real estate or compete with real estate, with people in South East Queensland. South East Queensland supports a human population of around 3.6 million people. It's growing at about 2.2% annually. The most recent updates of koala habitat mapping suggest that we've lost probably 72% of the original habitat that we had within South East Queensland to support koalas. That's led to some monitoring and research which indicates that in the Koala Coast, in the Pinelands area, there are really strong and measurable declines in koala populations. The work also indicates that that interaction between people and koalas is a key thing. So people are a significant part of the problem, but they also need to be and are a significant part of the solution to that problem as well. In thinking around this, and I certainly won't try and navigate you through the very complex model on the left-hand side of that screen, but the Queensland Government's response to those issues, or that great conundrum faced by koalas, was to elicit an expert panel. And that panel consisted of ecologists, planning experts, people with knowledge of the biology and ecology of koalas. And they constructed that really complex model. The key things I want to say about that model is that model indicates a whole range of things that are threatening and impacting on koala populations, but majority of them are connected in some way to people. And as I said, that makes it very clear that people are part of the problem, and in moving forward, people need to be part of the solution. And in thinking about that, and wildlife management in more general sense, there's a need, I guess, to simplify that. It's important that we have the detail, but it's also important, I think, that we can also step back and think about if we're going to pragmatically address and try and implement some change, both in the way we're approaching these programs, but also in delivering some change for the benefit of koala populations. We needed to simplify things and step back. So the simplified model on the right-hand side, where we have koalas, koala habitat and people, and we're interested in that interaction, I think was the starting point for us, where we were introduced to the work that Kath and her team had been doing with Sharyn and the team from Griffith. And that was really about introducing a human dimension to the whole concept. We had all the ecological knowledge, we had all the biological knowledge that we needed, and we had clear evidence that koala populations were in jeopardy. But what we didn't necessarily understand was what people were thinking and feeling, what they were willing to do, what they understood to be the problem, and how we could move to change that. So this was very much a slide I stole off a presentation that Sharyn gave us, which was about talking through the concept of behavioural change. And similar to the work that Kath had described, is that there's a section of the community who are already fully engaged, fully supportive and ready to do stuff for koalas. There's a section of the community who are almost lost to us, who will respond to those things if we impose really strong laws or penalties on them. And then there's a section of the community who are either indifferent or aren't aware or aren't informed in terms of what they can do or how they can meaningfully contribute. So the challenge for us in moving forward was how to engage that sort of middle section, and hopefully in doing so also bring some of the people who are completely anti what we might be trying to do into that thing. So it was very much around the need to do marketing and to be better in the way that we engage with the community and communicate with the community. So I was introduced to the work that Redlands had been doing by Kath through some local government workshops that we'd been running, and she then introduced us to Sharyn. So we ran a workshop involving all 12 local government authorities across South East Queensland, which Sharyn presented the sort of concept with regards to the work they were doing. Kath presented in relation to the results they'd been getting in Redlands, and the question was, do the rest of the councils think this is worthwhile? Is there something in this for the rest of us? Is this something we can scale up and deliver across the whole of South East Queensland? And these couple of outcomes here are from that initial workshop. We asked the questions around what do you understand that the local government is currently doing in your area? What do you think actions that the community can take? And that was the first step in a process of co-designing and co-creating an initial one-year project that we engaged Griffith University to run on our behalf to work with the local governments around building some social engagement programs to lift the awareness, to establish a baseline of what the communities in those different local governments knew and understood, and also to get a feel for what they were willing to do and what they thought needed to be done. And that led to essentially the design of the project, which we ran over the previous financial year, so 2020-21. Again, I think that's the year. And we're, again, we were struck obviously by having COVID overlay when we were doing this, but it was very much from the feedback from the local governments that the project was going to be built around doing some baseline surveys, so doing some surveys of the communities in all 12 local government areas, running some koala awareness campaigns across those same 12 local government areas with a similar look and feel. So again, that we were giving the same messages, the same images to each of those areas to again try and reinforce and get a feel on what the community was willing to undertake. Through those initial workshops, again, we identified some of the strategies that had been used in the Redlands, and that was around Leave It, which essentially is a wildlife aversion training program to train dogs to avoid interacting with wildlife, and particularly with koalas that, again, Griffith had been involved in developing and implementing. And then a program of a dog fest, which again was a program that Griffith had been running to use dog owners essentially as a target audience to bring into events and use that as an opportunity to provide awareness and education around koalas and the threats that were being faced by koalas. So over the previous 12 months we implemented a program, or Sharyn and the team were very busy implementing a program of conducting baseline surveys, running koala awareness campaigns, conducting Leave It events through a website and through other material that they'd provided, and running a few dog fest events across that area. At the end part of that 12 months, we did follow-up surveys to again just measure what the effectiveness of that initial 12 months of project work had been. So this initial snapshot is just some of the data that was collected through those surveys. So the surveys also collected information around the demographics of the populations in those particular local government areas. It also tested information about what they knew and understood to be the threats, what they knew and understood to be current programs. So this is just a bit of a snapshot of some of the stuff that fell out of those initial surveys around the types of the community's understanding of what the local government were doing in relation to certain things. And what it showed was that there was a fairly high level of awareness around some key programs about what local governments were doing in the education space, what they were doing in relation to habitat and mapping of koala habitat, what they were doing in research and partnership programs. But then for other programs, the level of knowledge and awareness fell away. So in terms of specific wildlife management solutions, the level of awareness was sort of now around about the 50 to 60%. Then in terms of actual specific measures that were being done to address koalas, that was much more reduced. So in terms of the importance of wildlife sightings, in terms of the importance of dog training, programs to encourage koalas to be able to navigate and move through urban environments, in terms of the use of koala detection dogs as a survey tool. The level of awareness by the community of those types of programs was quite low. The survey also looked at what the residents themselves, some of the strategies that they might wish to follow or that they may be aware of or seek to engage in. So again, there were a couple that were quite high. So the community was well aware that the local government and the state government were interested in having information around koala sightings. There was an awareness that through speed signs, both static and also active speed reduction signs, that people were aware that they were being used to try and reduce road strikes. Then the level of awareness fell in terms of requirements by the community to manage responsibly their own dogs, to avoid interactions between dogs and koalas. The idea that you might actually build or utilise koala-friendly fencing. The idea that, again, involved in wildlife care or support and other programs, there's a less level of awareness in those programs. So this is an example, and again, Kath showed some more up-to-date ones that have been modified by Redlands, but the idea was to have a single sort of look and feel for the type of information we were presenting to the community around developing koala awareness. So the stuff that Kath showed, again, they had a very strong focus on the Bachelor campaign, so you would have seen the koala with the rose in its mouth, and he's out looking for love. And it was more about engaging people in understanding what koalas are doing in that landscape and how you interact with koalas and what's important for you to do in a meaningful way that can make a difference. So a lot of this collateral that was developed by the Griffith team has since been rolled out in other programs, and Sam will talk a little bit about some of the work that's been done in Logan and really successfully deployed in Logan. Through other connections in Griffith, the team also produced an award-winning short video about what the community can do, and that was initially done as a bit of a sideline exercise, but again has been really successful in promoting messaging around simple things that the community can do and engage in to help koala conservation. In terms of the Leave It campaign, during the 12-month program, the Griffith team did actually update the web material and a whole range of products on the Leave It program, and that led to, I think, nearly a 300% increase in the number of users and subscribers to that website. And the statistics are there in terms of there's sort of over 16,000 users who logged on for 21,000 sessions to look at that wildlife aversion training for dogs. And again, the proof in those sort of programs is in the types of stats that Kath showed, where there was a significant reduction in the impacts on dogs in the Redlands area. And again, there were webinar sessions, there were blog sessions, there's and a monthly newsletter that was really well subscribed. Dog fests were really big events that were held, and again, they were an opportunity to bring people together that had an interest in dogs, but use that as a basis for providing them koala education and information. And they were really successful, both in the number of people that were engaged, but also the level of support that they generated. Griffith also set up a couple of social media campaigns through their own Wildlife Watcher Facebook and through their Furry Friends Facebook. And again, the level of reach and engagement that we've been able to achieve for some of our koala messaging through those mechanisms has been amazing. Again, as an ecologist or a wildlife manager, this isn't the space that I traditionally would work in. So to me it was a bit foreign language, but it's been really noticeable the increase in awareness and the increase in engagement that we're getting by adopting this type of approach. So some key next steps. The success over that initial 12 months has really demonstrated for us the worth of this investment. So we're extending the existing collaboration with Griffith. We've convened another local government workshop to confirm and build a program for the coming year. There's a real focus in the next 12 months in leveraging partnerships and co-investment. So we've had really basic conversations with local government to say, Griffith and ourselves have invested in this. We really need to do this as a legitimate partnership. Some of these messages and things, we want to normalise those annual campaigns and those programs so that they just become a continuing, ongoing part of our messaging around koalas. We want to extend that engagement and co-design to encompass other koala conservation initiatives. So we're looking at programs to do koala habitat restoration, and we're trying to do that in communities where, in some of those rural communities, there's a real aversion to trees and putting trees in those landscapes. So part of the messaging in there is about, again, bringing that part of the community along on the journey to understand that the koalas and their enterprises can coexist. It's about improving integration of our comms channels. So again, Griffith has these really wonderful comms channels, but we haven't necessarily at this point maximised how we integrate those comms channels with our own government and local government comms channels. And then again, the beauty of the program has been that there's this ongoing project evaluation and refinement. And that's a key part in measuring how the community is responding to what we're doing, but also in directing how we review and redesign the program on an annual basis. Just some quick acknowledgements in closing. Really key acknowledgement to Griffith and the wonderful work they've done in bringing us into this communications and change landscape, but also a really strong acknowledgement to the 12 local governments that have contributed to this work and have come on board to do that work. So, yeah, thanks very much.
So Geoff may not have given enough justice to the fact that Redland City Council actually were kind enough to gift the Leave It program into the university, and the university itself sort of then has continued to invest and give us a bit more capacity to help push that along, which has been quite amazing. So I'm just going to use this opportunity to say thanks to Redlands and make sure they pass that back. It was really great to see questions start to come in for our speakers. And again, I just point to I won't keep doing this during the thing, but it is behaviour change. I have to just prompt and reinforce and remind so that you don't go, oh, yep, that's right, because otherwise you're going to lose that thought. So if you do have direct questions to direct to Geoff, please do so. So you've heard so far about how potentially the programmatic work that was happening in Redland City Council across 6 years gave Queensland Government the confidence to try and see if it could now work across and through councils to say, look, is it possible? Could we come up with a bit more of a coordinated approach, save each other a bit of time, energy and effort? Question mark. I'm going to hand to Samantha and let her actually talk through the Logan City Council experience.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me along here today. I want to say a big thanks to Kath and Geoff for actually laying those foundations for change and giving, I guess, the foundations for Logan to jump on and continue that change in our local community. My role is as an environmental project officer at Logan City Council, so I'm responsible for the on-ground implementation of actions relating to the environment and specifically koalas. Before I jump in and talk about the changes and the benefits of those, I just want to take you back and give some context about Logan's koala focus. So we have our City of Logan Koala Conservation Strategy, which has been endorsed since 2013. And within that strategy, we recognise that there is the importance of engaging and collaborating with the community and key stakeholders. One of our key strategic outcomes is, of course, to increase positive community engagement and education. So we have, since the endorsement of the plan, been rolling out initiatives to educate and engage the community. A lot of these started in the early years with workshops, and we had various different types of messaging. So we had a range of different workshops, in-person workshops, and a range of printed material and flyers that went out. Then we followed that up with updating our website with detailed information and putting out detailed printed material. In about late 2017, 2018, we started to do a lot more on social media and putting up some posts, but these weren't linked or integrated in any sort of way. And the photos that were used and the material used was very generic koala material. So is there a bit of a disconnect happening there? In early 2020, we, as part of our plan, we did a survey to our community to see how we were going in benefiting koalas. And what we learned from our community in that time, from that survey, was that yes, we have increased koala knowledge through these initiatives, but but that's been a slight increase, and overall the concern and well-being of koalas has dramatically increased. We also learnt from that survey that the community is calling for more information. They want to be more engaged and more involved, and we need to give that to them. At this same time, we also were learning about the successes of Redland City Council's campaigns and the wonderful research that they had been doing. So with all that information, we went to our in-house marketing and design team and presented that to them and said, look, we want to do a coordinated campaign. And they said, yeah, sure, totally. You've given us this information, we can do it. And we gave them the example of the Bachelor campaign from Redlands. And they said, oh, that's great, we can do that, but we don't want to copy. We can't be looking to do the same thing. We've got to put our own spin on it. So that was all well and good. And then we came up with the Tinder campaign for koalas that rolled out. And so this was our first attempt in the 2020-2021 breeding season to roll out a more strategic koala campaign. And it included some social media, we had printed material, we had some electronic material, we even had radio, and hopefully this will work. I don't know if this is gonna, if you can press play on the audio clip. Well, that's... Ooh. Radio silence. That's all good. Oh. Anyway, the radio campaign also fed into that same Tinder look and feel, so we had that consistent messaging. And the campaign itself, we did have some parameters in place to monitor its success. So our marketing team looked at the social media statistics, and we also were monitoring to see if we had an increase in koala reportings and the visitation to our websites. And we did notice a slight increase in that space. Overall, there was really good internal support to continue with this, and it was our first sort of attempt at getting and communicating with teams in-house. And everyone being on the same page. So in 2021, when there was all these other workshops going on and collaborations with state government and other local governments, and the talk of a more coordinated approach to koala education and engagement, when we saw the posters and the material that was presented by that social marketing at Griffith had put forward, we put our hands up and were super keen to get involved, because at this point we were in the works of putting out our 2021 campaign, but our marketing and design team were like, oh, we still need to put a spin on what we did last year. We can't go forward with the same material. And so we put our hands up to collaborate, and
it's
the
hard
focus...
to swipe right when you've got pause. Koalas mate the old-fashioned way, in person. Make sure you slow down and look out for them on the road as they search for their perfect match. Logan City Council is asking residents to be on the lookout and report their whereabouts. So if you spot a koala, let us know by visiting bit.ly/LCC koala. If you see an injured or distressed animal on the road, please call 1300-ANIMAL.
And that was a radio ad. So yes, our campaign, we had the focus of the campaign objectives were to raise awareness in the community of koalas, encourage people to report koala sightings, also encourage the community to know who to call if they see a sick or injured koala, and actually what is a sick or injured koala, and hopefully look to decrease the number of koala vehicle collisions. So we had these in place, and the thing that Council has a range of in-house resources. So we have a graphic design team, we have a marketing team, we have knowledge experts, and two other more restricting things that we have. We had a set budget for this campaign, and we also have our corporate branding guidelines and our style guidelines, which dictate how we can, like our wording, our tone of voice, our colour scheme. etc. So we sat down with social marketing at Griffith and sort of worked out what role each of us could play, and it was decided that council would be supported with the implementation of the campaign, and they would help us to customise the campaign messages and review materials and messages to ensure consistency. The other big win for us in this space was that what Geoff was talking about with those surveys that were going to be occurring, the baseline survey before the rollout of the campaign and the one that was to follow afterwards. This was great for us because a big pushback that we find with our projects is we really just want to get things on the ground, and there's not as much time or resources to actually do the studies that prove that things are working or not and where change is needed. So since we were with the collaboration, we were handed over some original items from social marketing at Griffith team, and the great thing is that spoke the language of our marketing and design team, which I cannot speak, and they were able to then update that design and I guess what we like to call Loganise it and put it into our own branding. So as you can see, there's been some slight changes with the colours and the fonts, but overall what is really key is that the messages are remaining the same. And to me, as someone who's not much with all this graphic design stuff, it's a pretty, they look quite similar. So the campaign ran for the 2021-22 breeding season, so over a 4-month period. And it included a range of materials. So we had a suite of social media posts that went out on various platforms. We extended that to posters, both printed posters but also electronic media posters. We had roadside banners that went out. And then we got a bit creative and we also knew that we needed to get the message out in other ways. So that included, we did some car magnets that we stuck on our council vehicles that were out quite a bit on the road, and also developed a glove box checklist. And all of these outcomes were always themed and linked back to the themes that we as a collective group and all the research that had gone in before about those key themes of koala breeding season, sick and injured koalas, dog safety, dogs and koalas and those sorts of things. In addition to these, we also did run some events and had some radio outputs. And we kept, especially in the social media space, we kept it live and active. And hopefully the tech's going to work. Again, I've got a video on the next slide that we incorporated through the campaign. If it'll press the play button. So we incorporated this during our campaign. A member of the public sent in this video of a koala crossing the road. And we were like, this is fantastic, because at the time, social marketing and Griffith were out in the community doing some focus group surveys, and they said the big thing that the community was asking for was, well, you're saying they cross the road, but I never see it. So this came at the perfect time. We're hearing from the community that they needed this evidence, so we incorporated it into the campaign. So what did this mean in terms of outcomes? So the campaign itself, speaking to the social media side particularly, we had almost 300,000 people reached on social media, and we actively engaged over 16,000. And that converts to an engagement rate of 11.7%, which my marketing team was super excited about, and it really gave them drive, and they were so on board with the campaign. The other benefit, as I was saying, is with the baseline surveys and follow-up surveys that went out, we were able to see where people were seeing the campaign and what they were able to recall. So we could see that the Facebook and the roadside banners and the magazine prints, that's where people were seeing it, and that the key messages people were seeing was the koala breeding season, slowing down on our roads, and sick or injured koalas. And those were the messages that we had citywide, whereas a lot of the other messages we did start to target to certain key pockets within the city. And this all led to some behaviour change outcomes. So this is just a one-year overview. So we compared the behaviour outcomes from our Tinder campaign. So we had about 50 koalas reported through our avenues in that campaign and 222 clicks through to our website. Whereas when we rolled out this coordinated approach, we had more than doubling of our koala sightings being reported and close to a quadrupling of the number of visits to the website. And also what was interesting with the website was the amount of time people were spending on that website also increased. And so we are now rolling out our 2022 campaign, and as Geoff also alluded to, there's that ongoing research and review that's going on, and that really has helped us to refine the campaign for this year. We've learned a lot that the videos worked really well, so trying to incorporate a lot more of those. And looking at the survey results and seeing what other messages or information we need to get out there to the community. So working collaboratively to design new collateral and new messaging that anybody, any of the local governments can use. One of the ones we wanted to focus on was really ensuring everybody that every koala sighting counts, because we did see that from the survey that people were seeing koalas, they knew how to report them, but then there was still this gap in people actually taking that initiative to report it. So we need to let people know why it's important to report. So yeah, we're really excited to roll out this campaign and see what we learn from this year and share it with our networks. So thank you, and I guess just a reminder that it is koala breeding season, so please look out for them while you're on the roads.
All right, everyone, I have some questions and answers in, so I'm going to ask Sam, Kath and Geoff to come up and take a seat with me up on stage. Now, of course, there was one that came in that I thought was just a little bit of fun. Why did the koala cross the road? Audience, I think you can all answer that one for me. All right, the first question is actually going to go out to both Kath and to Sam, but I'll ask Kath to go first, to just talk a little bit about the processes to make things like this happen within council.
I have to stand up. I feel odd sitting down. Gosh. I have to say, to be quite fair, Redland Council has been pretty proactive in this space for a long time, but they were very ready, I think, to take the next step, and I just hit it at the right time. And I'm fairly good at nagging. So lots of experience, and I'm quite pesky. So which Geoff can attest to, and probably Sam. So yeah, I think it's about persistence and having a really good idea of what you want to achieve, and making sure that those people inside council understand that we have to do this together. I can't do it on my own. Our team can't do it. It's really, as I said earlier in my presentation, it's a shared experience. We have to do it together. And I think that's what it's taken. It's taken bringing people together. I'm not sure if that's answering this question particularly well, but that's my experience.
So I would say from our side of things, a big thing I find with, at least in my experience with local government, is everybody works in silos. So it's really trying to break down those barriers between my team that have that expert knowledge about what we know we need to address the threats and those sorts of things, and working with our marketing team and design team to get that message out there and making sure it's clear and on point. And a really big helping factor in that was having examples that other people had done and the research behind it, and also the backing that we're not doing this alone, that this is up there is other people. It really helps drive that change in house and wanting people to jump on board so they're not missing out, that sort of, that fear factor that, if we don't get in now, we're going to miss out. So that definitely helped overcome some of the hurdles that we had and made our teams, it was both a learning journey for our team to learn a lot more about the marketing and design side of things, and also for our design and marketing team to learn a lot about koalas. So,
Thank you, that is great. I myself had the pleasure or privilege, or maybe not, of working with some of the designers and the communicators who were just about falling apart at the very differences. And then Sam herself, who talks and says, being someone who doesn't look at that level of detail, how she doesn't even see the differences. I have taken those A/B versions right across the planet, and it is amazing how few people actually see it. It's about a 70% don't really notice the differences until you force them to look for it. So I guess that tells you a little bit too about don't get too caught up in the detail. It might be slowing us down, just as one last bit of advice. Phil has asked the question, and this is a common theme we get right across across all the research work we do. Every time we're out in community co-designing, everyone says, oh, get the kids on board. It's got to be through the schools. That's how you're going to make this happen. That's where the change is going to be. So my question for you is, how do you actually work with kids and through schools to get some things happening?
Well, from Redland City Council, we have a fairly extensive education program through our Indiguscapes Centre. So we are very active in the school communities, and we also are very active in our bush care, and we have kids programs, etc. But I agree. I mean, we have to start with the young kids. But for us, we've been trying to focus on high schools. High schools are the next guys who are the next voters. They're the next drivers. They're the next house buyers. So our focus is really has been that sort of secondary level because we are already doing a lot at that sort of primary level.
And yeah, we also host a range of events, and a lot of that I find we are quite good at targeting the younger children and young family groups. And we have an education officer that does do talks at schools. But also, we are also really interested in targeting the high schoolers, and we actually have our Logan Youth Action Group, and there is an environmental committee on that, and we've been working with them and seeing how we can get the koala campaign out and messages through that group, and they've actually got an event coming up in November that we're tagging on to as well. So that's a really exciting space that we're really keen to get involved in, and yeah, watch this space.
I'll make a brief comment. I think some of the messaging we've already done with local governments is very simple messaging, so the intention is that it still reaches kids, but in a way that the kids can then influence behaviour change in their parents. So particularly around the messaging around koala breeding season, pools, dogs, speeding, are all very simple messages where kids can reinforce for their parents, why don't we lock our dog up? Why don't we do something in our pool? And again, without too much evidence, I think that's a very strong way of influencing that change. But the other aspect that we're working on is that through our Daisy Hill Koala Centre, we're very focused on developing curriculum-based messaging so that we can actually host schools and host kids through the centre and be presenting the same sorts of messaging in a more interactive way for the kids that are coming into those centres, both with their parents but also with their school groups, so that they're getting the same messaging in a way that they can better understand it and interact with it, but also can then go back into their community and reinforce with their parents and with their mates and things, those messages that we're trying to promote.
Geoff, the next question is for you. Why don't landholders want to plant trees?
I don't think that's universal, so I'll immediately say that we have some really great and cooperative landholders that are actively involved in programs to restore and rehabilitate areas of land. But there is still within, I guess, some areas a reluctance, and I guess there's this age-old thing that if there's more trees in the landscape, there's less opportunity for grass and less opportunity for me to feed my livestock or to grow the crops that I need to actually be productive on my land. So it's about taking slow steps to I guess, re-educate people, and we're trying to do that, I guess, through demonstrations. So where we have willing and motivated landholders who are engaged in the process of rehabilitating land is to use those as case studies and to use them as change agents within their rural communities to drive that change. So where we've actually got landholders on board, we are actually having tree planting days, and that's bringing the community in, but also bringing neighbours and other people in, that they can see that, hang on, these people are actually still running a productive farm, but they're planting trees to encourage koalas. How can the two work together? And it's really about having willing people who are already engaged in the process being the champions, and they're then bringing the others in to understand that trees aren't a threat to their livestock, and in fact help support those landscapes, help build resilience in those landscapes, and help protect the landscapes against other threats.
All right, Geoff, this one is for you. How can we get more city councils to be actively involved in koala conservation?
Well, I think again, you can probably reflect a little bit on this yourself, having been involved in lots of workshops with local government over the past 12 months, is that when we started the project, it was very obvious that some of the local governments, like Redlands, were really advanced in their thinking and their planning, both with regards to koala conservation measures, but also on how they engage the community in that process. Others had their own programs, but were like, we've got our program, we're not sure that we really need to do what you're doing. We think we're pretty okay. And then you had other councils who went, we've not been doing any of this, we want it all. And the process essentially over that first 12 months was, some immediately said, we want everything you've got, give it to us. Others went, we're probably okay, we'll sit back and we'll just see what happens. And again, I think the experience with Logan coming on board has again demonstrated the value in them being engaged in that process. And I think the subsequent co-design workshop we had to look at what this next 12 months might look like, a few more of the councils have stepped forward and said, we're probably a little bit interested now in that stuff we said we weren't interested in before, and we probably wouldn't mind doing that. So I think it will be a gradual process, because there is both a significant difference in the level of resourcing councils have for this type of work, and the level of at which they're currently involved in that type of work, but also in their ability to see the change happening in other local governments and wanting to be part of it. So I'm encouraged by what's happened in the first 12 months, the enthusiasm that they've shown for the next 12 months. And they then also gave us advice. They said, look, if you want our councils to co-invest in this process, write to the mayors. So again, we've with your help, we've crafted a letter that our minister will send out to all the mayors to say, we're on board, we're doing this, you've seen the success in some of the local government areas, we want you all to join in and partner in this program.
I think it goes back to Kath's advice, don't give up. Persist, persist, persist. We continue to reach out, we continue to talk. We have other councils who are already on board, and yet others who are now talking about doing exactly what Logan City Council's done. Their role modelling means others now have the confidence to go forward. I know all the councils ring each other. They go to Logan to ask advice. What's it like? Should we do this? So overcoming fear really does actually matter too. Now, a question specifically for you, Sam, is did you have with that Facebook and the online campaign both like organic and paid media?
Yeah, it was a combination of organic and paid. I don't know all the details. I just left it to our marketing team to say this is what they thought was best, and they adapted the strategy as it went along. But yeah, we had a set budget set aside for that.
Yeah, thank you. And a final one that I think all of you can actually address. We have spoken a little bit about some of the communication materials, or a bit of how they've engaged with schools to actually make stuff happen. But what else have you found to be particularly effective in actually engaging citizens into the koala protection cause?
I think it comes back to empowering the community, giving them information. I think that's where we've had success. We've been able to, through the creation of our koala-safe neighbourhoods and the fact that we've got a number of koalas in those neighbourhoods who are being monitored, and we're able to feed that information back consistently to the community so that they feel that there's some sort of custodianship, and it gives us that. I think it's what we've all been saying is it's about information. It's about sharing information and evaluating what we're doing, and I think the confidence comes to the community when they see that there actually are koalas there, and that they feel when we give them a name, and this is Benson or this is Betty or whatever it is, they suddenly become quite passionate about their particular koalas in those neighbourhoods. And I think that's the thing, that by giving those animals personalities, they're not just another blob in a tree, that's a blob with a name. And that blob is getting up to all sorts of no good, going into people's back gardens, crossing roads, doing all that sort of thing. And part of the programs that we're really focusing on is really high-level community engagement, to the point that with our Koala Guardians program, we're actually offering these koalas to community members to basically watch and report on those koalas consistently. So we can get that very fine-scale data on what those koalas are doing. Most importantly, though, it's about trying to understand, to protect those koalas, but making sure that those animals are kept healthy, and we're able to get them to hospital if something happens, because we have a low population, and that's a really important part of it. So it's that interaction with the community, I think, that that has been the greatest benefit, citizen science, and we will continue to focus on those citizen science programs.
I'll go next. Definitely what we learnt from that first rollout of the campaign last year was people really want to know, well, yeah, great, you're putting up this poster of a koala, but what's actually happening on ground? So as Kath is saying, yeah, bringing in that live data, what's happening, who's where, and updating that as you go along. And people really we really learnt from that, and also having messages from different people, not always it coming from council. So we've involved a lot of our wildlife carers who are coming from the community side of things, and helping us spread that message. So it's not always like government's telling us what to do. It's other people who are stepping in and helping to share the responsibility and spreading the message.
Last comment?
Yeah, no, I think Kath and Sam have both said it very well. And the reflection would be that in looking at one of those slides I put up where we had sort of the highly motivated part of the community already, we had a reasonably large indifferent or mixed interest group within the middle, and then we had some that were a bit opposed to some of the work that was being done. By informing and engaging with that group in the middle and giving them an understanding that it isn't just the job of state and local government, but there are things that the local community is empowered to do and can do and must do to be part of the solution to the problem. I think, again, just empowered that part of the community to think, actually, if we want these koalas to persist, then there is a role for us in this place. Whereas I think previously it was like, well, the government's allowing this clearing to happen, the government's allowing people to run over koalas. Why aren't they putting a law in place to stop people driving fast in those areas? Why aren't they banning dogs in those suburbs? And the people began to realise that it wasn't simply a government thing, it was something that they could actually actively have a role in making a significant change and contributing to. And again, the positive reinforcement by saying, by doing those simple measures, by us slowing down a little bit in those areas, we've had a 50% reduction in the number of koala hits in that local government area. We've had a 300% increase in the number of sightings that are coming in, which is helping us understand where koalas are. They go, well, actually, we are making a difference. The stuff that we're contributing is important.
I would like you all to put your hands together for 3 individuals who not only took to the change stage first this morning, but who have been enormously amazing in partnering, having the conversations to try and build the trust and the faith to actually make some change happen. The results, I think, speak for themselves, and this is early days. So just imagine what might be in the next 6 years. So I invite you now to head outside for a morning tea break, have a nice brain break. If other questions come, don't hesitate to pop them in, and we shall do our very best to follow up and get back to you all. We are breaking for a half an hour, so we'll be back in here from 11.